Hey Rebels, I'm sorry I'm a few minutes late popping in today. Things are crazy around here. I'm sure you are feeling that crazy energy also. Mercury retrograde starts tomorrow. I'll be doing a video on that on my personal page on Monday if you want to check it out. That'll be a part of my energy report. Let's talk today about how you free your ancestors. What I mean by that and how to do it. All right, ready? Buckle up. Let's do this. Okay, so the first thing is, what do I mean by free your ancestors, and why should that be something I'm concerned about? What I mean by that is, how do you help them, the people who have already lived their lives, they're over on the other side, or maybe they're back for new lives, or whatever, the people who have come before you, your ancestors, why do they need to be freed? What does that mean? What it means is they're trapped by their own stuff, right? They had to deal with different struggles and different issues. They had emotions that they trapped. They had ego stories that they kept, and it was passed on down the line. All right, that's how energy works. Energy gets passed on. There's actually some really fascinating studies, and I encourage you to look them up. I wish I could remember the name of the company that did this study, but I can't off the top of my head. But definitely seek it out, look it up, because it's super fascinating, where they actually proved something that those of us who study energy have known for a while. And that is that energetic beliefs pass through DNA, all right? And they proved that actually in this specific study with women who had been sexually abused. They passed on something energetically, and they noticed that women who had dealt with that issue, that their daughters had a higher risk of dealing with that issue too. And it's not that their victimness was made bigger. It's not that because one was a target, another was. It was the belief that that was something that could happen to them that was passed on, and believing that they could be a victim of that energetically passed through DNA. And they actually found the DNA mutation that happened that passed. That's how intense these things are. So something could have happened to your 3 times great grandmother that now in your life, as you walk around your world doing your thing, you have a little bit more of a struggle with. So this issue is important. Freeing your ancestors is important because their stuff gets passed to you. Now, it's also important to note that their good stuff gets passed to you too. The things that they've overcome in their life, the things that they've moved through, the things that they've accomplished and succeeded on and learned, the really good vows and stories and intuitive abilities that they've unlocked also energetically pass to you. So there's a real beautiful part in this, but there's also a difficult thing. When you're doing self work, when you're really tapping in and looking at stuff, you can kind of know when you're getting into an issue that's probably passed to you, or an element has passed to you energetically through DNA. You can tell because there's suddenly a ton of spirit energy around you. I know a lot of you have done emotion code issues with Aspen, who's a rebel, and she'll tell you, and you've probably experienced it, that you feel a lot of spirit energy when you're working on releasing issues like that. Same goes for when you start working on vows or ego issues to overcome, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, there's a lot of spirit energy around me right now. What is going on? This is probably because you working on this is actually going to heal down the line, okay? So you doing something and releasing something and working on something and overcoming something actually releases it through your ancestral line, and it will go all the way back, all right? Here's another, if we want to make this less trippy, let's make it real. Hey Mary, let's make it like real world, apply right now. Let me make this more concrete and less abstract so I can really understand it. As someone who has the ability to communicate with spirit, I can tell you that the best thing that you can do is use your ability to be you, and to do it in the ways that your ancestors couldn't. Now, that doesn't mean that, you know, when you think of them in their human life, that they would have been like super, you know, their alive life, that they would have been super excited for you to do something in particular. But the fact that you're doing it, that you're following your heart, you're listening to your intuition and doing it is freeing, all right? It does something for them and for their soul and for their work on the other side. It does something really positive for them. So let me give you a couple of examples, okay? Let's say that you had a grandmother who was just not into women working, okay? She thought that was wrong. She used to spout off about it. She thinks women should stay home. There are places in the kitchen. Whew, that makes me shiver to say. But let's say you had that in your life and you were hearing this all the time. And then you say to me, but Heather, how can me going and doing that and working and having a life, that's gonna free her, that's gonna help her? Abso-fucking-lutely, it's gonna help her. It's gonna help her a lot, because that was something that her ego had trapped. It was a fear making her have a restrictive belief, all right? Anytime you have a belief that someone else shouldn't have something, even if it's something you don't want, but if it's a belief that outside of yourself, someone else should have some sort of restriction on them, we know that someone is really trapped in a fear-based ego belief. All right, so I won't get into the politics of that. I could discuss it for a billion years with you if you would like. But whenever you're trying to restrict someone else's belief, it's a direct issue that comes from fear. Okay, fear-based ego entrapment is what I like to call it. And what happens when you have fear-based ego stuff is you want it to continue. Like it's sort of like a contagion, right? And you start directing it at other people. So actually, by doing that thing that your grandmother was vocal about trying to restrict in other people, you do free her, because she was trapped by an ego fear belief that was holding her stuck. Energetically, it makes no sense to want to take a right or a decision or an ability away from another human being, because energetically we know that we're all connected and that we're all the same. Your intuition never wants to do that. In fact, intuitively, you're naturally inclined to want to give somebody abilities, beliefs, rights, all of that, even if it's not what you want. Okay. Now, there are plenty of things that in my life I don't really need. Like I don't need the ability to have birth control because girlfriend's tubes were like tied or burned or whatever the hell they do now. I don't actually need that. But you better believe that I'll be on the front lines fighting for women to have the right to have it, because intuitively that feels right. And I know other women need that. And it's intuitively, you know, it's part of your job to voice fighting for that. Okay, makes sense, but it's not directly affecting me. Now, again, I'm not trying to be political. I'm trying to give you an example, and this is just truth-based, okay? If somebody who's in my position, if I didn't want that, if I was like, well, I don't need it, it doesn't affect me, and I don't think it's right to have that, and then I went and fought for other women not to have it too, that would be an ego, and it would be in direct violation of my own intuition, because we know intuitively, right, we're all connected. So if you can sort of grasp that concept, you can understand that even if an ancestor was not cool with that, did not drink a certain Kool-Aid that you are out to drink, you're still going to do something wonderful for them, something that they couldn't heal ego-wise in life. You're going to help them heal now as they do their work over on the other side, okay? I realize that this is trippy and deep, but I think it's important to know and to understand, okay? An example that I like to give is I had a great-grandmother who was deeply religious and deeply Catholic. And had she known the gifts that I had, would have had a big problem with that. All right, she would not have, that would have been very uncomfortable. However, the more now I go out and I do things, especially when it's connected to feminism, the more I feel her around me and I feel freedom being granted to her. Now, she never walked around telling people they couldn't or shouldn't do that. As far as I know, she never did anything to restrict that right. But I know, just like personal taste-wise, she wouldn't have liked that. It would have made her uncomfortable and fearful. So just by doing it, I can feel her approval on it. Make sense? So even if you're like, oh my God, why is this, particular ancestor around me? They were an asshole who would have never supported me doing this. It's because you're actually helping them free themselves from their ego fear stuff. The more you can be you, the more you can find your purpose, the more you can go out and do that in the world, the more you can be yourself, the more you can live a life directed by intuition, motivated and inspired by intuition. The more you can do that, the more you help your ancestors and the closer to them you will feel. It's this place where you have to try not to judge them for in life where they were restricted. It was all fear-based, right? We know that. So if you can sort of understand that concept and know, okay, that was just their ego selves. And over there, they still have connected to their egos that they had on this trip because they need to do work related to it, but they're not driven by them like we are here in life, right? So they get to sort of have a disconnection from that. And when that happens, they're really able to see all those fear-based restrictions holding them back and keeping them from being connected. All right. So when you do things that help free that, especially down the line, an issue that's been going on in your family and you broke it, that's a big deal. And it doesn't just have to be like being intuitive or coming out of the broom closet or being witchy or anything. It can even be something like being the first in your family line to go to college. You're going to actually free people on the way down the line as well. You might be the first woman in your family to own her own home. That's fantastic. You're going to free it down the line. You're going to give all of those ancestors who never had that the gift and the ability to feel as if it's possible. And then the future generations below you, you'll pass on the knowledge and belief that you can do that you can have that. So every time you do something, like, no, you're doing a favor right now when you are accomplishing something and feeling good and having a positive feeling about something. You are doing a favor for like your 10 times great granddaughter or your 10 times great grandson. All the things that you can do to free yourself are really great. Now listen, the mistakes and fear and struggles of your ancestors that passed on are not all bad. There's good things in those fights. There's reasons that you're here to release those. There's reasons why those things were strong enough to pass energetically and through DNA and down family lines. There's reasons for it. It's not random. There's reasons for it. You need that fight in some way to help you be who you came here to be. So understanding this stuff is really important. Let's make a bottom line. Let's put it in a nutshell. Let's say why this is so important. The way that you free your ancestors is by living a life that makes you happy, by feeling like you are free, like feeling like you are powerful enough to design your own life. And if that seems like, oh my gosh, that sounds great, Heather, but like I'm so far away from that, I can't even believe it, then take a step towards it. Every time you do one little thing towards that, you free them, you give them a gift, and you give yourself a gift. So remember that and work on that. As you go into next week, where you are probably like Thanksgiving, you're probably gonna be around family, right? When you're going into those situations, think about how being yourself, even around these people here, maybe some of them don't support all the things that you do or aren't always cheerleading for you to be you. Thinking about by just showing up and continuously being you, even if they're not accepting it, even if they're not like, you know what, we totally accept your behavior. Even if they're not doing that, you're giving them a gift, you're freeing them, you're doing something for them by showing up and doing it anyways. By sticking to that authenticity, you are doing something for everybody. They don't have to agree, but they do need to see it. So the more you do that, the better for everybody, okay? So keep on shining, keep on being you, and you'll heal not just yourself, but your ancestors and future generations to come. It is so important, all right? Keep on keeping on, friends. Breathe into Mercury retrograde. Like I said, Monday I will do a video on it. It starts tomorrow. You might already be feeling it. It's part of the reason I'm a little late coming in to do this video today. But just know, communication, the more clear you can be in the next couple weeks, the better. Okay? All right. I'll talk to you soon. Have a great day. Even if you're watching the replay and you have a question, please feel free to ask. I'm happy to come back and answer for you. If you haven't signed up for the mug exchange yet and you want to, make sure you do that. You have until the 30th, and then we're drawing names. So you want to make sure that you get that done. All right. So pop in for that, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, guys.